Your choice of chair reveals who you are. Carl Jung's psychological test. Which of these 5 chairs attracts you the most? Don't analyze it. Don't judge. Don't think about comfort or design. Just look, pause, and let your heart decide. This is not a simple test. It's an invitation to discover a part of yourself that usually stays hidden. Carl Jung believed that even our smallest choices reveal something deep inside us. The desires we can't name, the wounds we try to hide, and the archetypes that quietly live within us. Sometimes what draws us most says more about our soul than all the words we could ever speak. Can a single chair really show what's inside you? Can it reflect your fears, your need for safety, or your longing for love? Choose with your intuition, not your logic, because what follows is not an analysis of style, it's a story about you. At first glance, the chair might look plain, unremarkable, and quiet. It doesn't try to catch your eye, and yet, something about it feels peaceful, safe, familiar. If this is the one that draws you, it may be because you crave clarity and calm in a world full of noise and confusion. Your mind longs for a space with no drama, no overload, no pressure, just silence, simplicity, and peace. Jung once said that external order is often a sign of inner chaos. By choosing such simplicity, you might be unconsciously searching for balance, trying to find harmony where once there was instability. Maybe you grew up in a place where emotions were not easily expressed, where peace was rare and had to be protected. You may have learned to survive by keeping things quiet, by staying small, by avoiding too much intensity. This choice reflects the archetype of the runaway or the observer, someone who steps away from the noise of the world, not out of fear, but out of respect for their inner peace. Such people prefer to listen rather than speak, to observe rather than be observed. They often carry great wisdom but risk isolation. Choosing this kind of chair can also point to emotional armor, not hardness but distance. It's as if you are saying, "I'm here, but not too close." This quiet withdrawal is often a defense learned long ago, when showing emotion meant risking pain. Silence became safety. Simplicity became protection. You may now value predictability and calmness because your heart is tired of chaos. But Jung warned that what we repress doesn't vanish, it only hides. Sometimes peace can turn into avoidance. So it's worth asking, is your silence truly peace, or is it a shield? Is your calmness healing or hiding? Then there is the chair that looks older, stable, and full of history, the kind you might find in a quiet library or an old family home. It smells like wood and memory. Choosing this, one shows a need for structure and meaning. You are likely someone who values rules, principles, and depth. You dislike dishonesty and chaos, both emotionally and intellectually. You believe that the world, no matter how harsh, can be understood if we can find its inner order. In Jungian psychology, this choice connects with the archetype of the guardian or traditionalist. Such people protect not only others but also ideas, values, and traditions. They care deeply, but they also need control. Their strength comes from order, but their fear is often the unknown. You may hold on tightly to what is familiar, not because you reject change, but because you fear what happens when things lose their shape. Perhaps you've built your life carefully, keeping everything in its place, even when the world feels uncertain. Maybe you maintain elegance or structure as a form of safety. You might long for someone to notice how much effort you put into holding everything together. This doesn't mean you're conservative. It means you seek something steady to hold on to in a changing world. Jung reminded us that transformation happens where the conscious meets the unconscious, where order meets chaos. Physically or emotionally in your early life. By choosing it, you might be unconsciously trying to create within yourself what you once lacked, a place of safety, stability, and care. It represents your desire to feel secure, to finally rest without fear of being unseen or unloved. But there's also a quiet trap hidden inside that comfort. Sometimes, the armchair that promises peace becomes a throne of isolation. You sit safely upon it, but alone, separated from emotional closeness. The soft texture of this chair says, "I want comfort." But comfort isn't laziness or indulgence. It often comes after long years of tension, after carrying too much responsibility, too much strength for too long. People drawn to such symbols often bear deep exhaustion, mental, emotional, even spiritual. They long for a space where they can drop the mask, stop performing, and simply be, where every part of them is allowed to exhale. Yet what looks like comfort can sometimes be camouflage, a place where the ego hides to avoid confronting vulnerability. When you've been taught to always be strong, independent, and in control, it becomes hard to admit weakness. You forget how to be soft, how to ask for help, how to cry. Jung believed that our shadow often shows itself in what we overvalue. If you constantly seek luxury, control, or prestige, ask yourself, what am I compensating for? Does this desire come from true need, or from a deeper feeling of not being enough? Are you surrounding yourself with beauty because it heals you, or because it hides your pain? This armchair can also represent the need to control your world, your space, your emotions, and your boundaries. It's yours. You decide who sits next to you, when you open up, and how much you share. This can feel powerful, even safe. But over time, it can quietly turn into isolation. You might start to wonder, am I afraid to let go? Can I feel valuable without being in charge? Jung once said that the true self appears not when we hold control tightly, but when we can release it with awareness and trust. If this chair speaks to you, perhaps your soul is longing not only for rest, but also for acceptance, for a space where you don't have to be perfect, where you can be seen fully with your flaws, softness, and humanity intact. The message of this chair is simple. I want a place of my own. But maybe that place isn't a physical one. Maybe it's found in the quiet presence of someone who truly sees you, even when you're not sitting on anything comfortable at all. Then there is another chair, one that stands out boldly. Its colors, patterns, and shape demand attention. It doesn't try to blend in or be polite. It seems to say, look at me. I'm alive. I'm different. Choosing this chair means something deep inside you refuses to fade into the background. It reflects your individuality, your inner spark, your creative fire, your refusal to live in dullness or conformity. You likely have a spirit that values authenticity and emotion, a soul that still remembers how to play, create, and dream. This is the energy Jung called the archetype of the divine child, the pure, creative, and free part of the psyche that believes life is more than work, rules, and duty. It is the innocent yet powerful essence that wants to express itself without fear. But because society often fears what it can't control or categorize, this part of you might have been criticized, silenced, or misunderstood. You may have been told you were too emotional, too sensitive, or too much. You might have learned to hide your brightness to avoid rejection. Now, by choosing this vivid chair, you may be reclaiming that lost freedom, the right to express yourself, to feel deeply, to live colorfully. You want to think for yourself, love in your own way, and speak honestly, even when others prefer silence. Pretending exhausts you. You need truth, movement, creativity, a life that feels alive. Yet, even expression can become a mask. Sometimes we fill our lives with art, laughter, and color because we're afraid of what happens when things grow quiet. Maybe your creativity is not just joy. Maybe it's also protection. Maybe you laugh loudly because silence reminds you of sadness. This chair may also speak of a soul that was once wounded for being authentic. A soul that was told it didn't fit in, that it loved too openly or cared too much. And now, it's building a world where it can finally exist without apology, a world that feels beautiful, honest, and real. People who choose this path often crave authenticity so deeply that they're willing to stand alone rather than live a lie. They understand that when the soul stays silent too long, it begins to fade. For them, creativity is medicine, a way to stay connected to what is real and sacred inside. Jung wrote that reconnecting with the divine child within us is one of life's most important transformations. It reminds us of who we were before the world taught us to hide, before fear silenced our truth. Choosing this expressive chair may be your way of returning to that original self, the version of you that was unafraid to shine, to feel, to dream. But ask yourself, is your freedom pure, or is it still tinged with fear? Do you express yourself out of love for who you are, or out of the fear of being unseen? Can you be yourself in silence, in sadness, in doubt? Not just in light? Because being yourself doesn't always mean being bright or loud. Sometimes it means being still, uncertain, or quiet but honest. This chair says, I want to be myself. And perhaps that is the most human desire of all. Not to impress, not to hide, but simply to exist as you are, real, imperfect, and alive. To simply exist as you are means being real, imperfect, and alive, without pretending to be someone else. If you chose this chair, it might show that deep inside, you have a strong need for resilience. You're someone who has learned to protect yourself, not just from others, but also from your own emotions. Your heart is not a battlefield anymore. It's more like a fortress, strong and guarded. You've built it to survive. Life may have taught you that the world can be harsh, that trust can be dangerous, and that relying on others can lead to pain. In Jungian psychology, this represents the archetype of the warrior or the loner. The warrior fights not for fame, but to protect what truly matters. He knows pain well but rarely shows it. His strength is real, but it also carries loneliness. The loner, on the other hand, chooses or is forced into solitude. They step back from the world to find peace, reflection, and meaning. They've learned that being too open can sometimes mean getting hurt again.